They didn't chain your hands. They didn't lock you in a room. They did something worse. They taught you to chain yourself, to feel bad for needing rest, to apologize for saying no, to smile even when your soul screamed enough. They called it kindness, selflessness, goodness. But what they really gave you was guilt, not the kind that comes and goes, but the kind that settles inside your bones. A guilt that makes you shrink when someone's upset, that whispers, "Fix it," even when it's not yours to fix. You were trained to feel responsible for their emotions, their silence, their storms, even their disappointment. Somehow became your fault. When did you start apologizing for being alive? You say yes before you even know what they're asking. You explain yourself even when no one demanded it. You stay quiet just to keep the peace. But is it peace or just submission? You weren't born this way. You were conditioned. Somewhere along the line, you learned that pleasing them meant safety, and you needed safety. You were just a child. When they frowned, you flinched. When they raised their voice, your body remembered. So you became small, easier to carry. You mistook guilt for goodness. You were praised when you sacrificed yourself, rewarded for neglecting your own needs. And slowly, you began to believe that love looked like absence, that being loved meant disappearing. They said, "Don't be selfish. Think of others. Be the bigger person." But they never taught you boundaries, only surrender. And now, you don't know how to say no without shaking. You don't know how to rest without earning it through exhaustion. You don't know how to want something without guilt crawling in behind it. What if guilt was never yours to carry? You wake up tired, not from life, but from pretending. Pretending to be okay, pretending to be capable, pretending to be kind, when really you're collapsing inside. You look around, and all you see is a performance. Yours, every word rehearsed, every smile calculated. But behind your eyes, there's a quiet question. What would happen if I stopped? Stopped agreeing, stopped apologizing, stopped playing the role. Would the world fall apart? Or would you finally come together? You're not here to be good. You're here to be whole. You start to notice it, not all at once, but like a slow leak in your chest. Moments that used to feel normal now feel heavy, like dragging a bag of invisible bricks. A friend calls. You answer with a smile, but inside, you're already counting the minutes until it ends. Someone asks for a favor. You say, "Of course," but your stomach twists. You show up. You perform. You over-deliver. But the aftertaste? Exhaustion, resentment, a quiet ache that won't go away. Is this what being a good person feels like? You start forgetting simple things. Birthdays, appointments, why you walked into a room. But it's not forgetfulness. It's fragmentation. Because your mind is constantly tracking. What do they need? Are they mad at me? Did I say the wrong thing? You live in mental rehearsal, pre-editing every sentence, reading micro-expressions like survival codes. And when someone finally says, "You've been so distant lately," you nod and apologize, but inside you scream, "I'm not distant, I'm dissolving." You can't be present when you're always performing. Even in love, you hesitate. You offer affection, but wait for signs of withdrawal. You give generously, but it feels like a transaction. You skin every silence. You brace for punishment. You don't trust safety. You don't trust joy, because they've always come with a price. Even in your happiest moments, your body holds its breath, waiting for it to be taken away. Joy doesn't feel safe when guilt is your default setting. You lie awake at night, not because of noise, but because of everything unspoken. You replay conversations. You wonder, did I upset them? Did I say too much? Did I make it about me again? Even in silence, You're defending yourself against invisible accusations. You try to meditate. You try to journal. You try to breathe. But how do you relax when your nervous system thinks guilt is gravity? Your body never learned a feeling of being safe. So you overthink. You overcompensate. You become an expert in self-blame. They say, trust your intuition. But how can you, when your intuition has been hijacked by fear? You don't know if a feeling is real or just a conditioned response. You question your truth before you even speak it. You censor yourself before anyone else gets a chance. You tell yourself, I'm too much. I talk too loud. I need to calm down. But what if you're not too much? What if they were too empty to hold what you had to give? You shrink. You contort. You become what they can tolerate until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize what's looking back. You were edited by guilt until only the outline remained. And the worst part, you think it's your fault. You think breaking down means you're weak. You think forgetting who you are means you're failing. But maybe, just maybe, you're not breaking down. You're breaking open. And what spills out is the truth. You start asking dangerous questions, not out loud, but in the quiet between your people-pleasing smiles. Why do I feel guilty for saying what I need? Why do I feel selfish when I rest? Whose voice is this really? And then the truth begins to whisper that this guilt isn't yours. It was planted, watered, groomed by a system that needed you compliant, by people who called silence respect and obedience love. You were never praised for being real, only for being useful. And so you became a persona, the mask you wear in public, the version of you designed to be acceptable, desirable, digestible. But behind the mask, something else breathes, something raw, something restless, something that remembers who you were before you learned to disappear. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the rejected parts, the hidden wants, the anger you buried under politeness. The parts of you they taught you to shame didn't die. They're waiting to be seen, to be held, to be heard. You think you're broken because you feel too much, but maybe you're just finally listening to the parts that were silenced, the little you who was told they were too emotional, too dramatic, too needy. But what if that child wasn't wrong, wasn't bad, wasn't too much? What if that child was just real? You're starting to understand. This isn't depression. This isn't burnout. This is the grief of meeting your real self after a lifetime of performing someone else. You see it clearly now, not all at once, but like light dripping into a dark room. You were never the problem. You were the mirror, and they didn't like what they saw, so they called you difficult, too intense, too much. But you were only reflecting what they refused to face in themselves. Projection is a weapon, and you were the target. They couldn't handle their own shame, so they made you carry it. They couldn't admit their own anger, so they blamed yours. They couldn't grieve, so they mocked your tears. Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But they never looked inward. They only punished you for making them feel. So you learned, if they're upset, it must be your fault. If they withdraw, you must have done something wrong. You internalized their weather, like it was your personal forecast. You became the emotional airbag in every relationship. But now, something shifts. You stop absorbing. You start observing. You start saying, that's not mine. That shame doesn't belong here. That's not about me. It feels terrifying, blasphemous, even, to stop blaming yourself, because self-blame gave you control. And without it, you have to feel the rawness of truth, that some people hurt you, because they were hurting, but they chose not to heal. It wasn't your fault. But it is your responsibility now to unlearn the scripts, to reclaim the voice, to let the shadows speak, not to destroy, but to liberate, because beneath all the masks, all the roles, all the guilt, there's a self you barely met, not the performer, not the peacemaker, not the forgiver, just you, and she's still waiting, still whole, still yours. What if meeting her is the whole point? It happens in a moment, ordinary, unremarkable, but something inside snaps. A phone rings, a message arrives, a voice says, "Can you help me real quick?" And suddenly, you can't, not because you don't care, but because something deeper finally says, "No more." It's not burnout, it's awakening. You stare at your calendar, full, overflowing, but none of it feels like your life. You become a placeholder, a provider, a fixer, a ghost in your own routine. You laugh, but it's automatic. You answer, but it's hollow. You give, but it drains you. Until one day, you feel it rise in your chest. Rage, not loud, not explosive, but ancient, a holy anger. One that doesn't want revenge, only truth. This isn't my life. This isn't my voice. This isn't my story. You look around your room. Everything is where it's supposed to be, but it all feels wrong. The clothes, the photos, the text threads, like someone else built your life, and you've just been surviving inside it. Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But not you, not anymore. You're done avoiding. You're done apologizing. You're done shrinking. The rupture isn't the end. It's the beginning. You don't want to pretend. You don't want to smile through betrayal. You don't want to carry guilt like a medal. You want to scream, to sob, to go silent for weeks, and not explain yourself. You want to tear down the performance, rip off the mask, and whisper to the mirror, "This is not who I am." You walk into a room. You walked into 1,000 times. But this time, you see it differently. Not with your eyes, with your soul. Everything that used to comfort you now feels suffocating. The relationships, the roles, the rituals. You realize you've been living a story written by fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being unloved. Fear of being misunderstood. And in that fear, you abandoned yourself. You stayed when your body screamed to leave. You agreed when your heart said no. You said, "I'm fine," when everything inside was unraveling. But now, you can't lie to yourself anymore. You sit on the floor, back against the wall, breath shallow, heart racing, and the words form slowly, like a confession. I don't want this life, not this version, not this performance, not this cage built from guilt and expectation. You thought you were chasing love, but really, you were running from rejection. You remember every time you silenced your own truth just to keep someone close. Every time you laughed at a joke that hurt. Every time you swallowed your needs so theirs could thrive. But love that demands your disappearance isn't love. It's worship. It's control. And guilt was a leash. What they called loyalty was you abandoning yourself over and over again. You feel it rising. Not anger this time, but clarity. A deep, seismic knowing. I will not betray myself again. You won't be the one who abandons her. Not anymore. Because the version of you before the masks, she never stopped waiting. And now she's coming back. You wake up different. Not louder. Not braver. Just clearer. There's no announcement. No fireworks. Just a stillness that wasn't there before. You check your phone and don't respond right away. You read the message, but don't feel the old urgency. Their disappointment no longer feels like your emergency. You move slower, not out of fatigue, but out of choice. You listen to your breath, and for the first time, It doesn't sound like an apology. You're not trying to be good. You're trying to be true. And that changes everything. You stop asking for permission from people who benefit from your silence. The world doesn't collapse. Your friendships don't all shatter. But the roles, they shift. The helper stops helping. The listener goes quiet. The nice one stops smiling. And the people who loved your compliance start to panic because you're not shrinking anymore. You're not saying yes just to be loved. You're not bending over backwards to be included. You're not performing. You're becoming. You feel the old guilt knock, tap on your chest, whisper in your ear. But now you recognize it, not as truth, but as conditioning. And that changes its power. You begin setting boundaries, not with anger, but with clarity. You say, I can today. I need rest. That doesn't work for me. And your hands don't shake when you say it, because you remembered your peace is sacred. You no longer rush to explain. You no longer rush to please. You give space. And in that space, you find yourself. You walk slower. You look people in the eye. You take up more room. And you don't apologize for it, because now you're not negotiating your worth. You've felt the cost of self-abandonment, and you're not paying that price again. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like breathing in your own rhythm. Some people drift away. Some criticize the change. Some try to pull you back into the shape they remember. But that shape is gone. You're not reversible. You don't need to explain your growth to people committed to misunderstanding it. If this truth is vibrating in your chest, stay close. You didn't find this by accident. You're already waking up. Write in the comments if you feel it. I choose myself. There's no final moment, no ultimate arrival, just a deeper and deeper homecoming. And in this quiet reclamation, you realize you were never too much. You were just never allowed to be whole. Now you are. They don't understand you now. They say you've changed, that you're cold, distant, not like you used to be. But you hear what they're really saying. You're no longer easy to control. When you stop abandoning yourself, they feel abandoned by you. And that hurts more than you expected, because some of those people were your world, your constants, your history. You thought they'd be proud, happy to see you whole, rooting for your clarity. But instead, they disappear, or worse, they punish you with silence. Freedom has a price, and sometimes it's everyone you thought you needed. You sit alone, not lonely, just unfamiliar. You look around and realize you've cleared the room, but haven't filled it yet. The echoes of your old life still linger in the corners. But so does possibility. You miss the noise. You miss the chaos you used to call love, the drama you used to call passion. But now, you crave stillness, not just on the outside, but within. Loneliness isn't emptiness. It's the absence of noise that never loved you back. You begin noticing the people who stayed, the ones who never needed you small, the ones who celebrate your boundaries. Instead of resenting them, you speak less. But when you do, it's honest, it's slow, it's yours, and you start building again. But this time, from truth, not survival. You are no longer surrounded, but you are no longer lost. You don't arrive with trumpets, no spotlight, no parade. You arrive in silence, a different kind of silence. Not the one they used to trap you, but the one that feels like home. You're not hiding anymore. You're returning to yourself, to your breath, to the softness beneath all that armor. You sit by the window, and nothing hurts, not because life is perfect, but because you are present. You feel the wind, the weight of your own body, the pulse of your heart, that no longer races to earn love. This is what it feels like to belong to yourself. You don't need permission to rest. You don't need applause to speak. You don't need their love to feel worthy. You are love, not the romantic kind, not the sacrificial kind, but the rooted, unwavering kind, the kind that stays, even when you fall apart. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And now, you choose you. No longer living to be understood, just living to be. You hold your own hand. You cradle your own sadness. You become your own anchor. And in that wholeness, the world becomes quiet, not because it changed, but because you did. You see your past and forgive it. You see your shadow and welcome it. You see your future and walk into it. Barefoot, unarmed, awake, you rise from the ruins, not with armor, but with skin, not to fight, but to finally feel, not to win, but to return. This isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of a love that includes you,